What do we know about the tragic story of Absalom? According to the Bible, Absalom was the third son of King David, known for his striking beauty and charm. His narrative, found in 2 Samuel 13-18, unfolds a profound tale of betrayal, revenge, and the complex nature of familial relationships. As tensions rise within David's household, Absalom's quest for justice leads him down a dark path, ultimately culminating in a heartbreaking rebellion against his father. Welcome, dear friends, to another captivating journey through the pages of the Bible on our channel, God's Divine Message. Today, we delve into the harrowing tale of Absalom, a biblical narrative that intertwines themes of ambition, heartbreak, and the enduring call for reconciliation. If you seek inspiration in the timeless stories of faith, conflict, and redemption, you're in for a compelling exploration. Before we unravel the depths of this poignant story, make sure to subscribe to our channel, God's Divine Message, to stay connected with the profound wisdom and teachings of the Scriptures. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an engaging episode. Now, let's embark on this enlightening journey together and uncover the hidden truths behind the tragedy of David's most beautiful son, Absalom, as we seek to understand the lessons this story holds for our own lives. In the tapestry of biblical history, few stories are as poignant and layered as that of Absalom, the son of King David. Absalom was known not only for his extraordinary beauty but also for the tragedy that would ultimately define his life. His story, filled with love, ambition, and deep-seated pain, invites us to reflect on the complexities of familial relationships, the weight of expectation, and the consequences of our choices. Absalom was born into a royal lineage, destined for greatness. His very name means father of peace, yet his life unfolded in stark contrast to that meaning. He was the third son of David, favored not only for his looks. His hair was legendary, flowing and thick, but also for the charm that endeared him to many. As a child of a king, expectations loomed large over him. He was to be a prince who would uphold his father's legacy and lead with wisdom and strength. Yet, as the narrative unfolds, we discover that beauty and privilege often mask the deeper struggles that lie within. King David, a man after God's own heart, was not without his flaws. His reign was marred by conflict, betrayal, and moral failures that would reverberate through his family. The seeds of discord were sown early on, especially after the tragic events surrounding his daughter Tamar and the violent response from his son Amnon. Absalom, deeply affected by these events, harbored a desire for justice that would ultimately lead him down a dark path. As we delve deeper into Absalom's story, we find that his actions were driven by a desire not only for vengeance but also for recognition and acceptance. He longed to be seen as a worthy heir, someone who could fill the shoes of his father and lead the people. Yet, the very desire for validation began to warp his intentions. His ambition grew into a thirst for power that would pit him against his father, fracturing their once close bond. This tale of Absalom serves as a mirror for our own lives. How often do we find ourselves caught in the web of expectation, either from those around us or from within? The desire to prove ourselves can lead us to make choices that stray from the path God has set for us. We may feel the weight of our circumstances pressing down on us, pushing us toward decisions that, while seemingly justified, may ultimately lead to our own downfall. In the midst of Absalom's unfolding tragedy, we are reminded that God sees our hearts. He understands our struggles, our fears, and our desires for acceptance and love. Through the lens of this narrative, we can find profound lessons about forgiveness, reconciliation, and the transformative power of grace. As we journey through the hidden truths of Absalom's life, let us remain open to the lessons that God has for us. May we learn to recognize the whispers of divine guidance in our own stories, urging us toward healing and restoration, rather than rebellion and despair. As we delve deeper into Absalom's life, we must confront the profound weight of expectation that came with his royal status. Being the son of King David, expectations surrounded him like a dense fog, obscuring his vision of who he truly was and who he was meant to be. He was not just a prince, he was David's son, heir to the throne, a position imbued with glory but also fraught with pressure. From a young age, Absalom likely felt the eyes of the kingdom upon him. Each glance, each whisper, carried with it the silent anticipation of greatness. In the royal court, the standards were impossibly high. Absalom was expected to embody not just the regal qualities of strength and courage, but also the wisdom and moral fortitude that had defined his father's reign. These expectations grew heavier with time, pressing down on his shoulders like a mantle that was both a privilege and a burden. As he grew into adulthood, Absalom's beauty became a double-edged sword. While it garnered admiration and loyalty, it also ignited jealousy and competition among those around him. He was not only competing with his siblings, but also with the expectations of the people who looked to him as a potential leader. The more he tried to embrace the persona of the ideal prince, the more he felt the suffocating grip of those expectations. The absence of a strong paternal bond during pivotal moments in his life only intensified this struggle. David, despite his love for Absalom, was often preoccupied with the affairs of the kingdom and his own failings. The tumultuous events surrounding Tamar and Amnon drew a stark line between father and son, pushing Absalom into a corner of anger and resentment. In seeking to avenge Tamar, Absalom began to forge a new identity, one defined not by his father's legacy but by his own desires for power and recognition. In our own lives, we often grapple with similar expectations. We may find ourselves living in the shadows of others, feeling as though we must constantly measure up to standards that are not only high but also often unattainable. This struggle can lead to feelings of inadequacy and frustration as we navigate the complex terrain of family dynamics, societal pressures, and personal ambitions. God understands the weight we carry. He knows the burden of expectation can be stifling and can lead us astray. In times of confusion, we might feel tempted to rebel against the roles we've been assigned, seeking to carve out our own paths, sometimes at great cost. But in this pursuit, we must remember the importance of surrendering our ambitions to God's greater plan. As we reflect on Absalom's story, let us seek to find our identity not in the expectations placed upon us, but in the truth of who God says we are. He invites us into a relationship defined by love and acceptance, freeing us from the chains of comparison and unmet expectations. When we anchor ourselves in God's love, we discover a profound peace that surpasses the pressures of this world. Absalom's journey is one marked by deep emotional currents, and at the heart of his rebellion lies a mix of hurt, anger, and an unquenchable thirst for justice. The seeds of rebellion did not sprout overnight. They were nurtured by the painful experiences of his life, particularly the trauma surrounding his sister Tamar and the betrayal he felt from his father, King David. When Absalom learned of Amnon's heinous act against Tamar, the injustice struck him deeply. Tamar, his beloved sister, was left desolate and alone, her honor tarnished by the actions of her brother. Absalom's heart was heavy with rage, not just for Tamar but also for the perceived inaction of David. This inaction created a chasm between father and son, a rift that would ultimately grow wider, fueling Absalom's desire for vengeance. In the wake of Tamar's suffering, Absalom devised a plan. He believed that avenging his sister was the only way to restore honor to their family. This choice to take matters into his own hands marked the beginning of his descent into rebellion. He was willing to go to great lengths to achieve his sense of justice, even if it meant sacrificing his relationship with his father. The complexity of Absalom's emotions, his love for Tamar, his anger toward Amnon, and his disappointment in David, created a volatile mix that led him down a dangerous path. Rebellion often springs from a place of pain, and Absalom's situation was no different. His actions were not solely rooted in a desire for power, they were also a response to deep emotional wounds. Many of us can relate to this experience. In moments of hurt or betrayal, we may feel an overwhelming urge to take control, to correct the injustices we perceive in our lives. However, the danger lies in allowing that pain to dictate our actions, leading us away from the very relationships we hold dear. As Absalom's rebellion unfolded, he began to gather support and influence among the people of Israel. His charisma and charm endeared him to many, and they rallied behind him, seeing him as a figure who could bring change. Yet, this support was built on a foundation of division and anger. The more Absalom distanced himself from David, the more he fed the fire of rebellion within himself. He became consumed by his quest for power, blinded to the consequences that would follow. In our own lives, It is essential to examine the motivations behind our actions. Are we acting out of love, or are we allowing our pain to drive us toward decisions that could fracture our relationships? God calls us to a higher standard. He invites us to seek healing rather than revenge, to embrace reconciliation instead of rebellion. In moments of anger or frustration, we must remember that God understands our pain, and He offers us a way to process those feelings without resorting to destructive choices. As we reflect on Absalom's rebellion, let us seek God's wisdom in our own moments of hurt. May we choose to respond with grace and understanding, allowing His love to guide our actions. Rather than allowing anger to take root and grow, let us cultivate forgiveness, healing, and ultimately, peace. God desires for us to walk in the light of His truth, free from the chains of our past hurts. Every choice we make, no matter how small, carries with it the potential for profound consequences. Absalom's story serves as a poignant reminder of this truth. His decisions, driven by anger and a desire for revenge, set him on a path that would lead to tragedy, not only for himself but for those he loved. After avenging Tamar by killing Amnon, Absalom fled from Jerusalem, fearing retribution from David. This act of violence severed the bond between father and son, leaving David heartbroken and consumed by grief. For David, the loss of Absalom was compounded by the guilt of not protecting Tamar and not addressing the wrongs within his family. The king's heartache became a mirror of Absalom's choices, each decision spiraling further away from reconciliation. During Absalom's exile, he began to plot his return. His desire for power transformed from a personal vendetta into a full-blown rebellion against David's authority. Absalom returned to Jerusalem, and with cunning and charm, he won over the hearts of the people, presenting himself as a compassionate leader. Yet, the foundation of this support was built on betrayal and division, and the consequences of his actions would soon reveal themselves. As Absalom positioned himself as a rival to his father, he initiated a civil war that would tear the kingdom apart. Families were divided, friends became foes, and the once unified nation of Israel was thrown into chaos. Absalom's ambition blinded him to the damage he was causing, both to himself and to those around him. In his quest for power, he forgot the lessons of loyalty, love, and the importance of family. The path to tragedy often begins with seemingly justified choices. We may convince ourselves that our decisions are necessary, even noble, in pursuit of what we believe is right. However, when our choices stem from anger, hurt, or a desire for control, they can lead us down a dark path. The collateral damage often goes unnoticed until it's too late. Absalom's story compels us to examine our own choices and their potential consequences. Are we acting out of love, or are we allowing past wounds to dictate our actions? God desires for us to seek His guidance in every decision we make. He invites us to weigh our choices carefully, considering not just our desires but also the impact they may have on others. In moments of conflict or anger, let us turn to God for wisdom. He understands the complexities of our hearts and offers us a path toward reconciliation and healing. Rather than allowing our choices to lead us into tragedy, we can choose the way of love, grace, and forgiveness. As we reflect on Absalom's tragic path, let us remember that God is always inviting us back to Him. No matter how far we stray, His grace remains available to guide us home. May we choose wisely, allowing His truth to illuminate our path and bring healing to our relationships. Absalom's story is rich with hidden truths that speak not only to the historical context of his life but also to the struggles we face today. As we delve into these truths, we discover profound lessons about forgiveness, the consequences of our actions, and the depth of God's grace. One of the most significant hidden truths in Absalom's narrative is the importance of dealing with our pain rather than allowing it to fester. Absalom's unresolved grief over Tamar's assault and his subsequent actions against Amnon were rooted in a desire for justice. However, rather than seeking healing, he chose revenge, which ultimately led to his downfall. This serves as a stark reminder that unresolved pain can drive us to make choices that destroy not only ourselves but also those we love. Moreover, Absalom's ambition to take the throne from David reveals the dangers of pride and arrogance. In his quest for power, Absalom lost sight of his identity and his role as a son. The desire to elevate oneself at the expense of others can lead to destruction, as we see in the chaos that ensued in Israel. The hidden truth here is that true leadership is grounded in humility, compassion, and a willingness to serve rather than dominate. Another crucial lesson lies in the impact of our relationships. Absalom's relationship with David was fraught with misunderstandings and unaddressed grievances. Had there been open communication and a willingness to reconcile, the tragic events that unfolded might have been avoided. This teaches us the importance of addressing conflict head-on and seeking to understand one another rather than allowing bitterness to take root. Absalom's story also highlights the necessity of seeking God's guidance in our lives. Each of his decisions was made in a vacuum of emotion, without the counsel of God or the wisdom of prayer. As believers, we are called to seek God in every situation, allowing His wisdom to shape our choices. God desires to guide us toward paths of righteousness and healing, but we must be willing to listen and submit to His will. Finally, amid the tragedy and turmoil, there is a thread of hope that weaves through Absalom's story, the hope of redemption. Though Absalom's choices led to devastating consequences, God's grace remains available to all who seek it. No matter how far we may stray, His love is unwavering. The hidden truth is that God is always waiting with open arms, ready to embrace us and lead us back to the path of restoration. As we reflect on these hidden truths, let us allow them to permeate our hearts and minds. May we choose to confront our pain, seek reconciliation in our relationships, and humbly submit our choices to God. In doing so, we can find healing not only for ourselves but also for those around us. Let Absalom's story be a catalyst for transformation in our lives, encouraging us to walk in grace and truth. Absalom's pursuit of power and revenge ultimately led him down a path of destruction, culminating in his tragic downfall. His rebellion against King David was not just a familial rift but a national conflict that threatened the stability of the entire kingdom of Israel. In his quest to claim the throne, Absalom lost sight of the very values he once held dear, transforming into a figure driven by ambition rather than love. As Absalom gathered support, he became increasingly confident in his ability to overthrow his father. His charm and charisma drew people to him, and for a time, it seemed as if his plans might succeed. However, this overconfidence blinded him to the realities of the situation. He underestimated the loyalty of David's followers and the resilience of a king who, despite his flaws, had a deep connection with God. The consequences of rebellion are often far-reaching, affecting not only the individual but also the community around them. Absalom's desire for vengeance created a ripple effect, leading to a civil war that cost countless lives and shattered families. His actions exemplified how one person's choices could lead to widespread suffering. As viewers reflect on this, it serves as a reminder of the broader impact our decisions can have on those around us. In the final confrontation, Absalom faced the full weight of his choices. Despite his initial success, he found himself fleeing from the very battle he instigated. The irony of his situation was stark. The once favored son, who sought to reclaim his father's throne, became a fugitive in his own land. His downfall was not just a result of military defeat but also a manifestation of his inner turmoil and unresolved conflicts. The ultimate tragedy came when Absalom was caught in a tree, his hair entangled, symbolizing the very vanity that had contributed to his downfall. This poignant image serves as a powerful metaphor for the consequences of pride and rebellion. The more Absalom sought to elevate himself, the more ensnared he became in the very ambitions he pursued. In our own lives, we must be vigilant against the traps of pride and ambition that can lead us away from God's intended path. David's reaction to Absalom's death was a poignant moment of heartbreak and loss. Despite the rebellion and conflict, David loved his son deeply. His grief over Absalom's death reflects the complex nature of familial love, even amid betrayal. It reminds us that reconciliation, forgiveness, and love should always be at the forefront of our relationships, even when conflict arises. As we ponder the consequences of Absalom's rebellion, we are encouraged to consider our own choices. Are we allowing pride and ambition to cloud our judgment? Are we seeking God's guidance in our decisions, or are we moving forward in our strength alone? God calls us to humility, love, and service, reminding us that true leadership and fulfillment come from aligning our lives with His will. In the end, Absalom's story is a tragic reminder of the dangers of rebellion and the consequences of choices made in anger and ambition. Yet, even in this tragedy, there is hope for redemption and restoration. God's grace is always available, inviting us to return to Him, regardless of how far we may have strayed. The story of Absalom is not just one of rebellion and tragedy, it is also a profound exploration of forgiveness, a theme central to the Christian faith. In the wake of his rebellion, both Absalom and David faced the heavy burden of their choices, and it is in this context that the need for forgiveness emerges as a critical element of healing. Forgiveness can be one of the most challenging aspects of the human experience. Absalom's actions deeply hurt David, creating a rift that seemed insurmountable. Yet, at the heart of every conflict lies an opportunity for reconciliation and healing through forgiveness. David's grief over Absalom's death was a reflection of the unconditional love a parent holds, even for a wayward child. In moments of pain and betrayal, it can be easy to hold on to resentment. However, God calls us to let go of our anger and seek forgiveness, both for ourselves and for others. Forgiveness is not just an act of kindness, it is a pathway to liberation. When we choose to forgive, we release the weight of bitterness that can burden our souls and impede our relationship with God. David's example teaches us that even in our greatest hurts, there is a call to love. He mourned Absalom, despite the rebellion and betrayal, demonstrating the depth of a father's heart. In our own lives, we are encouraged to seek forgiveness for those who have wronged us, recognizing that everyone is imperfect and in need of grace. Just as we have received God's forgiveness, we are called to extend that same grace to others. The path to healing often requires vulnerability and humility. It may mean confronting difficult emotions and navigating the complexities of our relationships. God is present in these moments, offering His strength and comfort. He desires to walk with us through our pain, helping us to process our feelings and find a way forward. Reflecting on Absalom's life, we see that his quest for vengeance stemmed from a place of unresolved hurt. Had he sought forgiveness rather than revenge, the trajectory of his life could have been drastically different. God invites us to reflect on our own lives. Are we harboring bitterness that keeps us from experiencing the fullness of His love? As we choose forgiveness, we open ourselves to healing and restoration. God's grace empowers us to let go of past grievances and embrace the hope of a future filled with love and reconciliation. In forgiving others, we allow ourselves to be forgiven, breaking free from the chains of resentment and anger. Ultimately, forgiveness is a powerful testament to God's love and mercy. It is a reminder that no matter the depth of our wounds, God is always ready to heal us and guide us back to Him. May we learn from Absalom's story and choose the path of forgiveness, both for ourselves and for those around us, so that we may walk in the light of His grace and love. As we conclude our exploration of Absalom's life and the tragic events that unfolded, it is essential to reflect on the profound lessons this story imparts about grace, mercy, and the transformative power of God's love. Despite the rebellion and heartache, God's grace is ever present, offering us a path toward redemption and restoration. Absalom's story is a cautionary tale, illustrating the consequences of choices made in anger, pride, and revenge. Yet, amid the tragedy, it serves as a reminder that God's grace is sufficient for every circumstance. No matter how far we may wander or how deeply we may fall, His love remains steadfast and unwavering. In our own lives, we often grapple with feelings of guilt and shame over our past decisions. We may question whether we are worthy of God's love and forgiveness. Absalom's story reassures us that God does not define us by our mistakes. Instead, He sees our potential for transformation and healing. God's grace invites us to come as we are, broken and imperfect, ready to embrace His love. It calls us to surrender our burdens and trust that He can turn our ashes into beauty. In the face of Absalom's rebellion, God's heart remains open, waiting for us to return to Him, no matter our circumstances. The lessons from Absalom's life remind us of the importance of humility, love, and seeking God in every aspect of our journey. As we navigate our own challenges, let us hold fast to the truth that God is always with us, offering guidance, comfort, and forgiveness. When we stumble, we can rest in the assurance that His grace covers us, empowering us to rise again. In moments of despair, we can find hope in the promise that God's plans for us are good. He desires to lead us into a future filled with purpose and fulfillment. As we reflect on the lessons learned from Absalom's story, may we choose to embrace God's grace in our lives, allowing it to transform us from the inside out. Ultimately, the story of Absalom serves as a call to action. It invites us to reflect on our choices, seek forgiveness, and extend grace to others. As we learn from the past, we can move forward with renewed hope, embracing the future God has in store for us. May we walk in the light of His love, ever mindful of His grace that sustains us through every trial and triumph. In the wake of tragedy, there lies a promise of redemption that transcends our circumstances. The story of Absalom, filled with turmoil and heartache, ultimately points us toward the hope found in God's unfailing love. While his life serves as a cautionary tale, it also embodies the potential for restoration that is available to each of us. Redemption is a central theme throughout Scripture, illustrating God's unwavering desire to restore what has been lost. Despite Absalom's choices, God's heart remained open, longing for reconciliation and healing. This truth resonates deeply with our own lives. No matter the extent of our failures, God is always willing to extend His hand and guide us back to Him. In moments of despair and regret, we can hold onto the assurance that God is in the business of redemption. He specializes in taking our brokenness and transforming it into something beautiful. Just as He worked in the lives of those throughout Scripture, He desires to work in us, redeeming our stories for His glory. Absalom's tragedy serves as a reminder that while we may face consequences for our actions, God's grace is greater than our shortcomings. His love invites us to turn back to Him, to seek forgiveness, and to embrace the new life He offers. As we navigate our own journeys, let us remember that God sees us not just for our mistakes, but for who we can become through His love and mercy. Hope is a powerful force, and it can arise even in the darkest of circumstances. It calls us to believe in the possibilities that lie ahead, to trust that God is working all things together for our good. As we reflect on Absalom's story, let us be encouraged that no situation is beyond the reach of God's redemptive power. In our own struggles, we can look to God as the source of our hope and strength. He invites us to cast our burdens upon Him, assuring us that we do not have to bear them alone. As we seek Him, we find peace and assurance that He is in control, even when life feels chaotic and uncertain. Ultimately, the promise of redemption is not just for us individually but extends to our relationships, our families, and our communities. As we experience God's healing in our lives, we are called to share that hope with others, becoming conduits of His grace. Just as David mourned Absalom, we too can carry compassion for those who have strayed, praying for their return and believing in the power of God to restore. The story of Absalom teaches us invaluable lessons about rebellion, forgiveness, and the profound hope that exists in God's grace. May we choose to walk in that hope, embracing the promise of redemption that is available to us all. No matter where we find ourselves today, we can trust that God is with us, working to bring about His purposes in our lives and the lives of those around us. As we conclude this gripping exploration of Absalom's story, we are reminded of the profound lessons woven into the fabric of the Bible. This narrative serves as a powerful reflection on the complexities of human relationships, betrayal, longing for acceptance, and the struggle for justice, and illustrates the far-reaching consequences of our choices. The tale of Absalom invites us to consider the impact of unresolved conflict and the importance of seeking reconciliation within our own lives. At God's Divine Message, we are dedicated to bringing these timeless tales to life, offering insights that resonate across generations and cultures. The story of Absalom is not merely a historical account. It is a poignant reminder of our shared humanity and the need for compassion, understanding, and forgiveness. If you've been moved or inspired by this narrative, we invite you to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with your friends and family. By doing so, you contribute to our community's growth and help spread the wisdom encapsulated in these ancient teachings. Thank you for being a part of God's divine message. Until next time, may the grace and wisdom of the Scriptures illuminate your path. Subscribe, share, and stay connected for more enriching stories from the pages of the Bible as we continue to uncover the hidden truths that guide us on our spiritual journeys.